My next guest, he's getting ready to make his featherweight return against Hakeem Dawodu at UFC 279. It's Julian Erosa. How's it going, Julian?
It's going good. Thanks for having me on, brother.
Absolutely, man. And got to feel good to be on a pay-per-view card again. How has camp been so far to this point, and how pumped are you for this opportunity?
Yeah, the camp's been great. I've known about this fight for it'll be 7 weeks out from it, and so solid amount of time. I've had short notice fights before, and so 7 weeks is more than plenty for me. But yeah, it's good to be on a pay per view. And actually, last time I was on a pay per view, it was a Conor McGregor and Nate Diaz
Mhm.
fight, 2016, and at the T-Mobile Arena, and short notice for Diaz, and he came in and shocked the world, and he might do it again. So it'll be fun to be on another card like that.
Coming around full circle, and how nice has it been to get that extra time for preparation? Because as you mentioned, you've had a lot of short notice fights out of as of late. How nice has that been?
It's I don't know, it's kind of like a love-hate relationship because I feel like the longer you know about a fight, you can kind of get in your head about it, and not
Mhm.
necessarily like in a negative way. You can just kind of obsess about it a little too much. So for me, like I train every day, and even outside of camps, I train about 80-90% of what I normally do anyway. So uh, sometimes it's nice not to know, and then like a week beforehand, then you find out. Honestly, it's more about the weight for me. And I think that's how it is for most fighters. Is we're all cutting weight, so it's nice to have a little bit of notice so you can get the weight down. Because if you're not in camp, you want to enjoy yourself. You want to have a little bit of food. Most people are going to gain a little bit of weight. Probably not as bad as like Patty the Batty,
Yeah.
um, but definitely you get a little bit bigger. I'm 6'1". I'm a big featherweight, so in between camps, my body can easily get up there, and so mainly it's more for the weight, but I don't mind it. Whether it's a short notice fight or if I know 4 months about it, or anywhere in between, I'm okay with it. And This has been actually I actually prefer kind of that 6 to 7 weeks, and so this is actually falling right in there, and it's pretty perfect for me.
And Dawodu is a really solid opponent, obviously a standard kickboxer in terms of his style. Your teammate Nicholas Mata is also kind of has a similar style in that respect. How
Yeah.
great has it been working with him for this camp and getting prepared for this fight?
Yeah, it's rare that you will find another teammate or someone that's training around you that has a fight coming up in this same amount of time. Like me and him, we're fighting a week apart, and we're pretty ideal for each other's matchups. He's fighting a 6'2" long, lanky grappler, and I'm fighting a kickboxer. So our game plans are pretty similar against each other as it would be against our opponents. So it's been very nice to mix it up with him, and also it's nice when you have guys that you don't necessarily do all your training with that you're sparring, because you start to find figure out people's little tricks and their details that they're good at. So when you spar somebody, it's nice to have no real advantage in that sense, because when you go and fight, when I fight Hakeem Dawodu, I've never trained with him, so I got to learn on the fly with him. And if I'm just sparring guys that I grapple with, I wrestle with, I spar with, I do everything with, then it becomes a bit unrealistic. Like me and Nicholas, the only thing we do together is spar. So we spar twice a week, and we don't grapple, we don't wrestle, we don't do anything else together. So it's nice to have kind of that fresh look every week of somebody that I'm still figuring out now. So because when you go out there and fight, it's a new opponent. It's somebody you got to learn on the fly, and so I think that helps me out a lot as well.
You're still down at Extreme Couture, right?
Yeah, I train at Extreme Couture and also at 10th Planet Henderson.
Oh, gotcha. I gotcha. How much of a benefit is it to work down at Extreme Couture? Obviously, you got a lot of featherweights to train with and a lot of guys just in general to train with. How great has it been down there?
Yeah, honestly, like even just the whole move into Las Vegas was huge for me. I was coming from a small town in Washington, and
Mhm.
the problem with that was I had a handful of teammates, but they were all different sizes. Like, we had a heavyweight, we had the smaller guys that were like 125ers, we had like a middleweight. You got guys that fall like all over the place that you have to train with. Because beggars can't be choosers, in that sense. So the great thing about Vegas is like literally on any given day, I could gather up, you know, guys that are like all featherweights and some of the best featherweights in the world to go train with, and have a whole group of just featherweights if I wanted to. So um, just that in general has been great. And then obviously at Extreme, um, there's a lot of really good talent in there. And not only that, just the coaching staff, 10th Planet that I go to, and then at Extreme as well. It's like I went from having one coach and a handful of training partners back in Washington to having a handful of coaches and, you know, tens of bodies that fall, tens of
Yeah.
bodies of training partners that are featherweights and great featherweights. I got Dan Ige, I got some of the best featherweights in the world that are training right next to me. So it's nice to have that.
That's awesome. And I want to ask you about something interesting because you mentioned that you do a lot of sparring with Nicholas. There's been a kind of a trend of a lot of fighters like Max Holloway and others who have kind of moved away from sparring in a sense. What are your thoughts on that? I guess how important do you feel like sparring is in terms of getting ready for a fight?
I think for me, I think that when you're coming up and you're young, you need to have some of those harder rounds early on to really kind of figure out what you're made of. And so for me, like I was doing an interview yesterday and they were asking me about the whole sparring situation, and when I first moved to Vegas, I was young, just gung ho, ready to get into it and just chase this dream down. And so I would spar on Tuesdays and Thursdays at Extreme, and we would do like 5 or 6 rounds. And you go as hard as your partners want to go, and um, not to act like I was like a super tough guy, but most times I would do like rounds. People knew it was going to be kind of a fight in there, so. And some people go light, and some people don't. But I feel like sometimes you need to run it a little hard in gym, just in the gym, so you can take shots, and then you can kind of see like how good you can take these shots and stay focused and be in there and not get distracted by that. And so, but as I've gotten older, I've realized that I know how to fight. I'm tough. I don't need to prove to anybody anything about my toughness and my durability. Um, I think it can be a little bit of a hindrance if you're going too hard too later on and or later on in your career. And so I think I went from sparring 6 rounds twice a week to now I only do 3 rounds twice a week, and they're a little bit lighter than they have been because uh, you know we know how to fight. We do all the training for it. And every once in a while, you want to have a little bit of a dog round, but
Mhm.
you don't want to make that a habit because I think my biggest issue that I was having was there was a couple of times that I was driving away from practice after sparring, and I couldn't remember who I sparred like right off the bat. Like it took me a little while I was driving, and I was like, who the fuck did I spar? Like I remember I sparred this guy and that guy, but who was these other rounds? And then I'm like, man, that can't be good. And luckily for me, I'm part of a fighter study here in Las Vegas at the Cleveland Clinic, and so they stay up on my brain health and help me out, stay on top of that. And so luckily I don't have any issues, but you know, uh, things like that, like driving away from sparring, not knowing who you're sparring, and forgetting those things, it can't be good. And so that's why I wanted to dial back some of my sparring, and especially in between camps, I don't spar really. I mean, I'll do some light touch sparring, and but I'll do all the 80% of all the other training that I'm doing. I usually just pull out the sparring, and when fight camp comes along, 6, 7 weeks, I try to get the sparring in then. And nowadays it's a bit lighter than it used to be.
And speaking of dog rounds, I got to ask you about your former opponent, Nate Landwehr, had a crazy fight against David Onama at UFC San Diego. Did you get a chance to watch the fight? What was your reaction to it?
Oh yeah, man. I always follow the guys that I fought because it's always nice to see how they do. And if you fight somebody and you beat somebody, and they have a resume that's good, and they keep putting onto their resume, it just adds a feather in your cap. And for me, it's been big with like Nate Landwehr. I mean, I think Nate is 3-1 in the UFC. I'm his only loss. He beat Ludovic Klein, who's super good. He was like a 3.5-1 underdog in that fight.
Mhm.
Onama, he was an underdog in that fight and almost got finished and came back and dominated the last 2 rounds of that fight. And then even the Darren Elkins, so his resume is great. And so for me getting a knockout over him in a little over a minute in that fight, just raises my stock in the fight game as well. And so I'm always and honestly, he's like one of the guys that I like to watch because he puts a show on. He's just like me. We're kind of two of the same. Of tough, durable guys that like to get gritty, and don't mind getting hit, don't mind getting hurt, and trying to come back. And so that fight was amazing. And I think people were a bit surprised that they had him at the co-main event, but man, they sure made it. They took that spot and they really made themselves shine. And Landwehr could have easily, man. And that's kind of a big thing with the reffing is like there's some refs in there that would have stopped the fight when Landwehr got hit and got mounted and got hit a few times. I mean, sometimes refs will stop it at that time. And so he was lucky that they let it keep going and he was able to come back. And that just shows how important it is to have a ref that's willing to let you fight through it, especially with certain guys. Like Landwehr is one of those guys. You can fucking hit him in the head with a baseball bat and he might fall over, but give him a second. He might be able to recover. And he showed that. And the reffing was great. And since the refereeing was great, it made the fight even that much better.
Does watching a fight like that kind of give you any extra motivation or juice in your own training camp to say, these guys are putting on a show, I got to go out there and do that as well?
Yeah, I think there's a kind of a fine line in your that you have leading up to a fight and wanting to do that, but also understanding that you need to go out there and win your fight and do what's beneficial and advantageous for yourself versus being like, all right, I just want to get in there and get fucking crazy, which I do want to do like all the time, but I got to pull myself back and understand that that's just something, that's a weapon that I have in my back pocket. At any given time, I can just dig into my pocket and pull up my fuck it card and just go for it. But you want to be smart in the situations that you're in. And Hakeem is a guy. If I get a win over, it's gonna be big for me. And so I gotta focus on how the easiest route for me to beat him and the smartest route for me to beat him, and just understand that let's say in the second round, it's like late in the second round and he's up. His game plan's going good, and I can't figure him out for whatever reason in a technical sense. Then maybe I need to just make it dirty and pull that card out and pull a little bit of a Nate Landwehr or Steven Peterson and just get a little dirty in there.
And speaking of crazy fights, I got to ask you about the UFC 279 main event, Khamzat Chimaev and Nate Diaz. Obviously, a fight that a lot of fans are excited about. How do you see that matchup playing out?
I think I'm in the generic census that everybody else is in, that Chimaev is going to win the fight probably, or should win the fight, but that most people are probably rooting for Diaz because if Chimaev goes out there and wins, everybody, oh yeah, well he should have won. But if Diaz goes out there and wins, it's going to be so crazy. And so I think that's what everybody's kind of rooting for, but they're expecting for Chimaev to win.
And not only that, because I feel like if Nate Diaz wins, it totally shakes up the welterweight title picture, right? Because obviously you got to expect that trilogy between Kamaru Usman and Leon Edwards is probably going to happen. But hey, if Nate Diaz pulls off the upset, he's probably right there too.
Yeah, exactly. I mean, and that's kind of a weird thing too, because if Chimaev beats Diaz, he don't get a title shot because, like, he was supposed to do that. Yeah, but if Diaz beats Chimaev and it's a huge upset, then yeah, he might get a title shot, which is kind of crazy. But it's weird how these things mix up. But I like it, and everybody I think loves to see that kind of thing. They love to see the underdog, rise above and make some big waves like that. And it'll be his last fight on the contract, so who knows what's going to happen, even if he does win. So it'll be interesting to see how that plays out. Plus, there's a lot of other good fights on the card. I mean, you got Ferguson versus the Leech. You got D-Rod versus Holland. You got Kutalaba. Who's Kutalaba? I can't remember who he's fighting. Oh, Walker.
Johnny Walker, yep.
Yeah, so the whole card is starting to get really stacked, and it's nice. It's nice to have some of those fun matchups. I mean, I think this pay-per-view is more catered towards like these fun matchups more than stars fighting each other or some of the bigger names. It seems more of like they're setting like fights up that are going to be fun and entertaining.
No doubt about it. And last question for me. Obviously, a lot of fans are talking about you and Hakeem as a possible fight of the night contender. Last question for me. What's your message to fans and what can they expect at UFC 279?
Yeah, I mean, I obviously always go out there looking to make it exciting, and I have no doubt that this is going to be the same. Um, I think for me, with Hakeem, I think you guys can expect for me to get a little dirty and really try to push the pace and push his cardio and try to get a third round finish, whether it's a TKO or via submission. And if it's a submission, my Darce choke is my fun one, so I'm hoping for something like that.
Absolutely. Well, before we wrap things up, I'll give you the final word to shout out any sponsors you have, friends, family, your team, all that good stuff. I'll give you the final word.
Yeah, I want to thank all, everybody that's a fan, even Hakeem's fans, because that adds to the fan base that we have. My friends and my family. Also you for having me on, and most importantly, my management, Iridium Sports Agency and Jason House, man, they do so much for me. And if it wasn't for them, I probably wouldn't be here. So always got to shout them out and tell them thank you. And once again, thank you for having me on.
Absolutely, man. Well, Julian, it was great to meet you. Great to chat with you. All the best with these final days of camp. And I'm sure we'll chat again soon, man. Thank you so much.
Yeah, thank you, brother.